All right, we're going to start Unit 4 today, working some more with square roots. Here we're going to solve equations with our square roots. You're going to see that we're going to treat them exactly like our previous equations, which means we're still going to use those inverse operations to isolate the term with the variable and then get the variable by itself. At the end, however, the only thing we need to add on is that we need to take the square root of both sides. And one other thing that we need to understand, that our answer has to have plus or minus. There are two possible answers anytime we take the square root in an equation, the positive answer and the negative answer. So let's look at some examples right here, a couple basic ones. We have x squared equals 25. You'll see that the variable is all by itself, x squared. So the inverse of square is square root. So we take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x, because x times x is x squared, equals, what number would we multiply by itself to get 25? That would be 5, because 5 times 5 is 25, but we put the plus or minus out in front, because positive 5 times positive 5 is 25. Also, negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. This is why we have to have both the positive and the negative, the plus or minus right there. Okay? Because you can multiply a negative number times itself to get a positive. Here's our next example, 4x squared equals 64. So we're going to divide both sides by 4, because just like with any other equation, we want the coefficient equal to 1. X squared is equal to 16. So just like this previous one, we have x squared all by itself. Let's take the square root of both sides. And we see that x is equal to plus or minus. What number would you multiply by itself to get 16? You multiply 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So positive 4 times positive 4, or negative 4 times negative 4. Okay. Let's move on into some other equations here where we need to use our addition or subtraction. So we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. X squared is equal to negative 4. Now here's the thing. Yes, 4 is a perfect square because 2 times 2 is 4. However, you cannot multiply any number times itself to get a negative, because as we saw up here, a positive times a positive is positive, a negative times a negative is positive. Okay, remember, if you love to love, you're a lover. If you hate to hate, you're a lover. Okay, from our integer rules earlier on. So we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So what we would say, this problem for us is going to have no solution. There's nothing that we can do in order to work it out. So we're going to say no solution. Even better, and even more accurate, we should say no real solution. Okay. So let's move on. X squared plus 8 equals 89. So we're going to subtract 8 from both sides, use that inverse operation. X squared is equal to 81. Okay, so we take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x, because square rooting is the inverse operation of squaring. These two cancel each other out, so we have only the x, equals plus or minus. What number would you multiply together to get 81? That would be 9. So x is equal to plus or minus 9. Now, so far, when we've had an answer, everything has been nice, neat, and had pretty integers. That's not always going to be the case. For example, well, I was wrong. Plus 1 here. X squared is equal to 36. I guess this one is going to work out for us. We take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus 6, because 6 times 6, or negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. Now we're going to get into something. This example isn't going to quite work out quite so pretty for us, but we're going to attack it just like we would normally. Okay, we're going to add 5 to both sides, so we may want to draw that line down here. 2x squared is equal to 34. We divide both sides by 2, and we get our x squared equal to 17. Now, 17 is not a perfect square. It's not. No integer times itself will give us 17. But we can continue working. We're going to take the square root of both sides, and x equals plus or minus. Now here's where we're going to want to use our calculator. So on our calculator, if we take 17, and over here you see we have square root. So we take the square root of, whoops, not twice, we just do it once. 17 square root. You get this nice big long decimal. Well, we're going to round to the nearest thousandth because we don't need to carry it on out so far. So we're going to have 4.123 after the 3 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. The number after it, the 1, tells us to round down, so we're going to just stop at the 3. So plus or minus 4.123. Okay. Moving on. We're going to subtract 8, we're going to add 8 to both sides. Okay. Just a reminder that when you're adding to the negative here, opposite operation, so we subtract the absolute values. Negative 408 plus 8 is going to be negative 400. You lost $408, or you owe $408. You paid them 8, so now you only owe 400. So negative 4x squared is equal to negative 400. We divide both sides by negative 4. Positive x squared equals negative divided by negative is positive. So that helps out. You have to have that number turn out to be a positive right there in order to be able to take the square root. Take the square root of both sides, and x equals plus or minus 10. Okay. 7x plus 11 equals negative 73, just like we have been. Start off by moving the constants. Subtract 11 from both sides. 7x, whoops, this should be an x squared. 7x squared equals negative 84. Divide both sides by 7. And x squared equals negative 12. Now, since this is a negative number, we can't go any further. So we're going to say no real solution. No real solution. So just a couple things to be aware of. If you end up with a negative number right here, x squared is equal to a negative, you have no real solution. If x squared is equal to a number that's not a perfect square, you can go ahead and take the square root, just round it off to the nearest thousandth. Okay? So, as you can see, we solve our equations just like we did with our regular variables, except this time we need to take the square root of both sides at the very end if we can. If not, that's okay. We're not able to finish it, and that happens sometimes. Go ahead and work out the practice problems, and we'll see you guys next time.